The desert wind carried the acrid smell of gunpowder and blood as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison pressed his back against the crumbling wall of the abandoned compound. His team of Navy SEALs had been pinned down for nearly 3 hours, and their ammunition was running dangerously low. The enemy fire had intensified as the sun began to set, painting the Afghan sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Jake uncomfortably of the muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness around them. "We need medical support now," Petty Officer Rodriguez whispered into his radio, his voice tight with pain as he clutched his wounded shoulder. The bullet had torn through muscle and bone, leaving him unable to properly handle his weapon. Blood seeped through his fingers despite the makeshift bandage his teammate had applied. Jake scanned the hostile terrain through his night vision goggles, counting at least 15 enemy positions surrounding their location. They had walked into a carefully planned ambush and now they were paying the price. His mind raced through tactical options, but each scenario ended the same way. Without immediate medical attention and reinforcements, they wouldn't make it through the night. The radio crackled to life with a response that surprised everyone. "Eagle 1, this is Falcon Medical. I'm inbound to your position. ETA 15 minutes. The voice was calm, professional, and unmistakably female. Jake frowned, knowing that female medics weren't typically deployed to forward combat positions in this sector. "Falcon Medical, be advised this is a hot LZ. Heavy enemy contact. Recommend you hold back until we can secure the area," Jake responded, concern evident in his voice. He had lost too many good people already and wasn't about to add a medic to that list. "Negative, Eagle 1. I'm coming in whether you like it or not. Your man doesn't have 15 more minutes to debate this." The response was firm and left no room for argument. Something in the medic's tone suggested she knew exactly what she was talking about. As the minutes ticked by, the team's situation grew more desperate. Rodriguez was losing blood faster than anyone wanted to admit, and their defensive position was slowly being compromised as the enemy closed in from multiple directions. Jake found himself glancing at his watch repeatedly, wondering if this mysterious medic would actually make it to them alive. The sound of rotor blades cutting through the night air brought both relief and anxiety. The helicopter approached low and fast, its pilot clearly skilled in combat insertions. But as it touched down in the small clearing 50 meters from their position, enemy fire erupted from every direction. Tracer rounds lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks, and Jake watched in amazement as the aircraft's door slid open. What he saw next defied every expectation he had formed. A figure emerged from the helicopter with fluid, practiced movements that spoke of extensive combat experience. Despite the chaos erupting around them, the medic moved with the confidence of someone who had done this countless times before. But what caught Jake's attention wasn't just the professionalism. It was the way this person moved through the gunfire as if it were merely an inconvenience, rather than a life-threatening situation. The medic sprinted across the open ground in a zigzag pattern that minimized exposure to enemy fire while maintaining maximum speed toward their position. Jake and his team provided covering fire, but they quickly realized their protection wasn't entirely necessary. This medic clearly knew how to handle themselves in a combat zone. "Where's my patient?" The voice was clear and authoritative as the medic slid into their defensive position, immediately beginning to assess the tactical situation, while simultaneously checking Rodriguez's wound. Jake found himself momentarily speechless, not because the medic was a woman, but because of the practiced efficiency with which she handled both the medical emergency and the combat environment. Dr. Sarah Chen had seen situations like this more times than she cared to remember, though she kept that information to herself. Her hands moved with surgical precision as she examined Rodriguez's shoulder, quickly determining the extent of the damage while bullets continued to whistle overhead. The familiarity of combat medical work settled over her like a comfortable jacket, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought might hesitate. "I need to get him stabilized before we can move," she announced, already reaching for her medical kit. "How long can you hold this position?" Her question was directed at Jake, but her eyes never left her patient as she worked to control the bleeding and assess for any signs of arterial damage. Jake watched in fascination as the medic worked with a level of calm that seemed almost supernatural, given their circumstances. Her movements were economical and precise, suggesting training that went far beyond standard combat medical courses. There was something about the way she positioned herself, the way she seemed to anticipate where the next burst of enemy fire would come from, that spoke of extensive field experience. "Doc, we've got movement on the east flank," Sergeant Williams called out, his sniper rifle trained on a group of enemy fighters attempting to outflank their position. "Looks like they're trying to cut off our extraction route." Without looking up from her patient, the medic responded, "How many and what's their rate of advance?" The question caught Jake off guard. Most medical personnel would focus solely on their patient and leave tactical assessments to the combat troops. But this medic seemed to be processing multiple streams of information simultaneously. As she continued working on Rodriguez, applying pressure dressings and preparing an IV line, Jake noticed something else unusual. Despite the intensity of the situation, her hands remained perfectly steady. Not the nervous steadiness of someone fighting through fear, but the rock-solid stability of someone for whom this environment was as familiar as a hospital operating room. "There," she said, securing the last of Rodriguez's bandages. "He's stable for transport, but we need to get him to a surgical facility within the next 4 hours or he's going to lose that arm." She looked up at Jake for the first time since arriving, and he found himself looking into eyes that had seen far more combat than any medic should have experienced. The radio crackled again with updates from their extraction helicopter, but enemy fire was still too intense for a safe pickup. They were trapped, wounded, and running out of time. As Jake considered their limited options, he noticed the medic studying their tactical situation with the same intensity she had applied to treating Rodriguez. Something told him there was much more to Dr. Sarah Chen than her medical credentials suggested. Jake watched as Dr. Chen methodically checked Rodriguez's vitals one more time, before turning her attention to the tactical situation unfolding around them. Enemy muzzle flashes continued to light up the darkness from at least 3 directions, and their ammunition count was becoming a serious concern. What surprised him most was how the medics seemed to be analyzing their defensive position with the same clinical precision she had applied to. "Treating the wounded SEAL. Your overwatch position on the north ridge is compromised," she said quietly, pointing toward a rocky outcropping where Sergeant Williams had been providing sniper support. "They've got at least 2 teams moving to flank that position." Jake followed her gaze and realized she was right. He could see the subtle movement of enemy fighters using the terrain to their advantage. "How did you spot that?" Williams asked through the radio, having overheard the conversation. "I've been watching that sector for the past hour and didn't see any movement." Dr. Chen didn't answer immediately, instead continuing to scan the hostile terrain with eyes that seemed to catalog every shadow and potential threat. Jake found himself studying her profile, noting the way she held herself, the automatic way she checked her medical equipment while simultaneously maintaining situational awareness. These weren't skills taught in standard combat medical training. "Williams, you need to relocate now," she continued, her voice carrying an urgency that made the sniper immediately begin repositioning. "They'll have your position zeroed in within the next 5 minutes." As if to punctuate her warning, a burst of automatic weapons fire erupted from exactly the direction she had indicated, sending chunks of rock flying from Williams's former position. The radio crackled with Williams's voice, slightly breathless from his hasty relocation. "Falcon Medical, how did you know they were moving on that position?" The question hung in the air, and Jake found himself equally curious about the answer. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, focused on adjusting Rodriguez's IV drip while enemy rounds continued to snap overhead. When she finally spoke, her words were measured and careful. Sometimes patterns in hostile movement become predictable after you've seen them enough times. It was a non-answer that only raised more questions in Jake's mind. The wounded SEAL, Rodriguez, had regained consciousness and was trying to prop himself up against the wall. Despite the pain medication Dr. Chen had administered, his eyes were alert and focused. "Doc, that was some serious tactical knowledge for a medic," he observed, his voice weak but curious. "Where did you serve before this assignment?" Again, Dr. Chen seemed reluctant to provide details about her background. "Various places," she replied, checking his bandages and monitoring his pain levels. "The important thing right now is getting you to a surgical facility." But Jake noticed how she deflected the question while her eyes continued to sweep their perimeter with the practiced vigilance of someone who had spent considerable time in hostile territory. The enemy fire intensified suddenly, with coordinated bursts coming from multiple positions. Jake realized they were facing a well-organized force that was systematically closing off their escape routes. As he considered their dwindling options, he was surprised to hear Dr. Chen speaking into her own radio using tactical terminology that was far more sophisticated than standard medical communications. This is Falcon Medical to any QRF units in Sector 7 Alpha. We have a compromised extraction site with multiple wounded, requesting immediate fire support on coordinates I'm about to transmit. She rattled off a series of numbers with the precision of someone intimately familiar with calling in artillery strikes. Jake stared at her in amazement. Medical personnel typically weren't trained in fire support coordination. Falcon Medical, this is Apache 77. We show no medical personnel authorized to call in fire missions in your sector. The response from the helicopter gunship pilot contained a note of confusion that Jake understood completely. Without hesitation, Dr. Chen switched to a different radio frequency and spoke a series of code words that Jake didn't recognize. Within seconds, the radio crackled back to life with a very different tone. Falcon Medical, this is Apache 77. Authentication confirmed. We are inbound to your location with close air support. Mark your position with IR strobes. Jake looked at his team members, seeing his own confusion reflected in their faces. Military medics didn't carry authorization codes for close air support missions. Those credentials were restricted to special operations personnel and forward air controllers with extensive training and security clearances. Yet somehow this medic had just coordinated helicopter gunship support using command codes that apparently checked out with military command. "Doc, what the hell was that about?" Sergeant Williams asked bluntly, having relocated to a new Overwatch position. "Since when do Navy medics carry authorization for close air support?" Dr. Chen continued monitoring Rodriguez while simultaneously watching the approaches to their position. "Sometimes medical personnel receive additional training for specialized deployments," she replied, but her explanation felt incomplete. Jake noticed she had positioned herself in a way that provided optimal fields of fire in multiple directions, another detail that seemed inconsistent with standard medical training. The sound of approaching helicopters provided temporary relief from the intensity of enemy fire, but Jake found his attention increasingly focused on the enigmatic medic who had essentially taken control of their tactical situation. As Apache gunships began their attack runs on enemy positions, Dr. Chen coordinated their strikes with a level of expertise that belonged in special operations rather than a field hospital. "Falcon Medical, this is Eagle 1, Jake said, using their established call signs. "I need to know what kind of background training you've received." His question was direct and carried the authority of a mission commander who needed to understand the capabilities of his team members. Dr. Chen looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing how much information to reveal. "Let's focus on getting your team home safely," she said finally. "We can discuss credentials and training after everyone is out of danger." Her deflection was skillful, but it only intensified Jake's curiosity about who this medic really was. As the helicopter gunship systematically eliminated enemy positions, Dr. Chen prepared Rodriguez for transport while coordinating with their extraction helicopter. Her radio communications continued to demonstrate tactical knowledge that went far beyond medical training, and Jake began to suspect that Dr. Sarah Chen was much more than she appeared to be. The pieces of a puzzle were beginning to form in his mind, but the complete picture remained frustratingly out of reach. All he knew for certain was that their mysterious medic had potentially saved their lives through skills that had nothing to do with treating wounded soldiers. As enemy fire diminished under the helicopter attack, Jake found himself more curious than ever about the woman who had arrived as their medical support, but was functioning as their tactical coordinator. The extraction helicopter touched down in a storm of dust and rotor wash as Apache gunships continued to suppress enemy positions around the landing zone. Jake watched Dr. Chen coordinate the medical evacuation with the same professional efficiency she had displayed throughout the engagement. Her movements were fluid and purposeful as she supervised Rodriguez's transfer to the aircraft. But Jake noticed something else: the way the helicopter crew treated her with a level of deference that seemed unusual for a field medic. "Ma'am, we have your priority medical transport standing by at the forward operating base," the crew chief reported, his tone respectful in a way that suggested he knew more about Dr. Chen's identity than Jake did. "Command has cleared all airspace for immediate medevac to Landstuhl if needed." Dr. Chen nodded acknowledgement while performing final checks on Rodriguez's condition. Patient is stable for transport, but will need surgical intervention within 3 hours, she reported with clinical precision. As the helicopter lifted off with Rodriguez aboard, Jake realized that most of his questions about their mysterious medic remained unanswered. The ride back to their forward operating base was conducted in relative silence, each team member processing the events of the mission, while Dr. Chen completed her medical documentation. Jake found himself studying her profile in the dim light of the helicopter's interior, noting details he had missed during the intensity of combat. Her equipment was standard issue but worn in ways that suggested extensive field use. Her movements continued to display the unconscious habits of someone with significant combat experience. Upon landing at the base, Jake expected Dr. Chen to head directly to the medical facility to complete Rodriguez's treatment handoff. Instead, she was met by a full colonel who Jake didn't recognize, along with 2 individuals in civilian clothes who carried themselves with the bearing of intelligence personnel. The brief conversation that followed was conducted too quietly for Jake to overhear, but he noticed the respectful way the colonel addressed Dr. Chen, Lieutenant. Commander Morrison, the colonel approached Jake after his discussion with Dr. Chen. I need to debrief your team about tonight's mission. Dr. Chen's involvement will be classified at the highest levels, and I need your understanding that certain details about her capabilities and background cannot be discussed outside of official channels. Jake felt his suspicions crystallizing into something approaching certainty. Sir, with respect, my team deserves to know who we were working with out there. Dr. Chen demonstrated tactical knowledge and command authority that goes well beyond medical training. The colonel glanced toward where Dr. Chen was speaking with the civilian personnel before responding carefully. Dr. Chen is assigned to a joint medical task force that operates in various capacities throughout this theater. Her additional training and authorizations are necessary for the specialized nature of her assignments. It was another carefully worded non-answer, but Jake was beginning to understand that direct questions about Dr. Chen's background weren't going to yield satisfying responses. As his team was led to the debriefing facility, Jake caught one last glimpse of Dr. Chen walking toward a different section of the base, her medical bag replaced with gear that looked distinctly non-medical in nature. The debriefing itself was thorough but frustrating, with intelligence personnel asking detailed questions about the mission while carefully avoiding any discussion of Dr. Chen's tactical contributions. Jake's team members were clearly as puzzled as he was about their mysterious medic, but official policy seemed to require treating her involvement as routine medical support rather than the tactical coordination she had actually provided. Later that evening, Jake found himself in the base's recreation facility, trying to process the day's events over a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the previous week. His mind kept returning to specific moments during the engagement. The way Dr. Chen had anticipated enemy movements, her familiarity with fire support protocols, and most puzzling of all, the authorization code she had used to coordinate close air support. Commander Morrison. Jake looked up to see Dr. Chen approaching his table, now dressed in standard base utilities rather than combat gear. Without the tactical vest and equipment, she looked younger, but her eyes still carried that alert awareness he had noticed during the mission. Dr. Chen, Jake responded, gesturing toward the empty chair across from him. I was hoping we might have a chance to talk. She sat down carefully, her movements still displaying the controlled precision he had observed in the field. I wanted to check on your team's status and ensure everyone is processing tonight's events appropriately, she said, her tone professional but warmer than it had been during combat operations. My team is fine, Jake replied, but we're all curious about exactly who we were working with out there. Your tactical knowledge and command authorizations aren't standard for medical personnel. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider how much information to share. Sometimes military assignments require personnel to develop skills outside their primary specialization, she said finally. My current role involves working with special operations units in various capacities. Jake studied her face, noting the careful way she chose her words. Dr. Chen, I've been in special operations for 15 years. What I observed tonight wasn't additional training. It was extensive combat experience. You moved through that engagement like someone who had been in Similar situations many times before. A flicker of something, perhaps recognition, or respect, passed through Dr. Chen's eyes before she regained her professional composure. Commander, there are aspects of current operations that require different approaches to medical support. Sometimes that means medical personnel need to understand tactical situations from perspectives beyond traditional boundaries. Her explanation was diplomatic but unsatisfying, and Jake realized he wasn't going to get direct answers about her background through normal conversation. However, something in her demeanor suggested that she understood his frustration and perhaps even respected his persistence in asking questions. Your team performed exceptionally well tonight, Dr. Chen continued, shifting the conversation away from her own background. Rodriguez's injury could have been much more serious if you hadn't maintained such effective defensive positions. Your tactical decisions saved lives. Jake appreciated the professional assessment, but he couldn't shake his curiosity about the woman sitting across from him. Dr. Chen, off the record, how many combat deployments have you completed? She looked at him for a long moment as if weighing the risks of providing even a partial answer. More than most people would expect for someone in my current position, she said quietly, but fewer than some situations have required. It was the closest thing to a direct answer Jake had received all evening, and something in her tone suggested there was a story behind her words that was far more complex than anything he had imagined. As Dr. Chen excused herself and walked away, Jake found himself more convinced than ever that their mysterious medic was hiding a significant military background that extended far beyond medical training. 3 days after the mission, Jake was reviewing after-action reports when Sergeant Williams knocked on his office door. The sniper entered with a tablet computer and an expression that suggested he had discovered something significant about their mysterious medic. Commander, I did some digging into Dr. Chen's background, Williams said, setting the tablet on Jake's desk. The official records show she's assigned to the 31st Medical Task Force, but that unit doesn't exist in any current organizational charts I can access. Jake looked at the screen, seeing standard personnel records that appeared complete but somehow felt incomplete. Dr. Sarah Chen's file showed medical school at Johns Hopkins, residency in emergency medicine, and deployment records that seemed deliberately vague about specific assignments and locations. What else did you find? Jake asked, noting that Williams had the focused expression he usually wore when tracking a difficult target. That's where it gets interesting, Williams continued, pulling up additional screens. I reached out to a buddy who works in personnel records at SOCOM. According to him, Dr. Chen's medical credentials are legitimate, but her security clearance level is way above what any standard medical officer would need. She's cleared for compartmentalized information that's typically reserved for intelligence operatives and special mission units. Jake studied the information more carefully, noting discrepancies between Dr. Chen's official assignment and the security authorizations attached to her personnel file. The pattern suggested someone whose actual role was significantly different from their official designation. There's something else, Williams added, lowering his voice slightly. My contact said that when he tried to access her complete service record, he got a message saying the information was restricted to personnel with special authorization. He's never seen that level of classification on a medical officer's file. The implications were becoming clearer, but Jake knew that speculation wouldn't provide the answers his team needed. As a mission commander, he had both the right and the responsibility to understand the capabilities and background of personnel assigned to work with his unit, regardless of classification restrictions. That afternoon, Jake requested a meeting with his commanding officer, Captain Reynolds, to discuss the unusual circumstances surrounding Dr. Chen's involvement in their recent mission. He expected to encounter the same diplomatic deflections he had received from other personnel. But Captain Reynolds surprised him with a more direct approach. Jake, what I'm about to tell you stays in this room, Reynolds began, closing his office door and activating a white noise generator that indicated they were about to discuss classified information. Dr. Chen is assigned to a joint task force that operates under multiple cover identities, depending on mission requirements. Her medical credentials are real, but they're not her primary qualification for the work she does. Jake felt a sense of vindication mixed with continued curiosity. Sir, my team has a right to know what kind of background and training the people working with us actually have. What we observed during that mission wasn't standard medical support. Captain Reynolds nodded, seeming to wrestle with how much information to reveal. Dr. Chen is a former Delta Force operator who transitioned to intelligence work after completing medical training. Her current assignment involves providing medical support to special operations units while gathering intelligence on enemy capabilities and tactics in various operational theaters. The revelation explained many of the inconsistencies Jake had observed, but it also raised new questions about the nature of Dr. Chen's current mission and the extent of her ongoing involvement with special operations. How long was she with Delta? Jake asked, beginning to understand why Dr. Chen's tactical knowledge had seemed so sophisticated. 7 years of active operations, Reynolds replied. She completed more combat deployments than most career special operations personnel before deciding to pursue medical training. Her transition to intelligence work was considered a significant asset because of her ability to operate in hostile environments while maintaining medical cover. Jake processed this information, realizing that Dr. Chen's reluctance to discuss her background wasn't just professional discretion, it was operational security for ongoing intelligence missions. Her medical role provided legitimate cover for intelligence gathering activities that required someone with both medical credentials and extensive combat experience. Sir, is there anything my team should know about future operations involving Dr. Chen? Jake asked, recognizing that understanding her dual role could be important for mission planning and team safety. Captain Reynolds consulted a classified message on his computer before responding. Dr. Chen may be assigned to work with your unit on future missions where her specific combination of medical and tactical expertise is required. Your team's performance during the recent engagement has been noted by higher command levels, and there may be opportunities for specialized assignments that require her particular skill set. The meeting concluded with Jake having a much clearer understanding of Dr. Chen's background, but also with new questions about what kind of missions might require both Navy SEAL capabilities and Delta Force medical intelligence operatives. As he walked back to his team's area, Jake reflected on how Dr. Chen's carefully maintained cover had been both necessary for her current mission and frustrating for personnel trying to understand who they were working with. That evening, Jake briefed his team on the information Captain Reynolds had authorized him to share. The revelation that their mysterious medic was actually a former Delta Force operator with intelligence training explained many of the inconsistencies they had observed, but it also highlighted the complex nature of modern military operations, where personnel routinely operated under multiple identities and assignments. So the doc is basically a triple threat, Rodriguez observed from his hospital bed, where he was recovering from surgery on his shoulder wound. Medical training, special operations background, and intelligence work. No wonder she seemed to know what she was doing out there. Sergeant Williams nodded thoughtfully. It explains why she was able to coordinate fire support and predict enemy movements. She wasn't just providing medical support, she was running intelligence collection operations while keeping us alive. Jake realized that Dr. Chen's involvement in their mission had been far more complex than anyone had initially understood. Her medical role had been genuine, but it had also provided cover for intelligence activities that his team had been unaware of at the time. The dual nature of her assignment explained both her tactical expertise and her reluctance to discuss her background in detail. As Jake considered the implications for future operations, he found himself curious about what other missions might require the unique combination of medical, tactical, and intelligence capabilities that Dr. Chen represented. Whatever those assignments might involve, he was certain they would be far from routine. 2 weeks later, Jake received orders for a mission that would reunite his team with Dr. Chen under circumstances that were far more complex than their previous encounter. The briefing took place in a secure facility that Jake had never seen before, with personnel from multiple agencies and military branches represented around a conference table that seemed designed for the most sensitive operational planning. Gentlemen, this mission involves the rescue of 3 captured intelligence operatives who were taken during a reconnaissance mission along the Pakistani border, the briefing officer announced, displaying satellite imagery of a remote mountain compound. The facility is heavily defended and contains an unknown number of hostages and enemy combatants. Jake studied the tactical displays, noting the challenging terrain and multiple defensive positions that would make a conventional assault extremely difficult. The compound was situated in a valley surrounded by high ridges that provided excellent observation and fields of fire for defenders, while limiting approach routes for attacking forces. Your team will be augmented by specialist personnel who have specific knowledge of the target facility and the captured operatives, the briefing officer continued. Dr. Chen will be accompanying your mission in a dual capacity, providing medical support for both your team and the rescued hostages, while also serving as the primary intelligence asset for identifying and securing classified materials that may be present at the facility. The revelation that Dr. Chen would be functioning openly in her intelligence role rather than maintaining medical cover suggested that this mission was considered significant enough to justify exposing her true capabilities. Jake realized that the complexity of the operation required personnel who could function effectively in multiple roles simultaneously. Dr. Chen has intimate knowledge of the target facility and the captured operatives, the briefing officer explained, pulling up architectural drawings that appeared to have been created from first-hand observation rather than satellite imagery. She spent 3 weeks conducting reconnaissance of this location before the intelligence operatives were captured. Jake looked at the detailed floor plans and defensive assessments, recognizing the level of tactical analysis that could only come from extensive direct observation. Dr. Chen had clearly been operating in this area for an extended period, gathering intelligence that was now crucial for planning the rescue mission. The captured operatives include 2 CIA analysts and 1 Defense Intelligence Agency officer who were gathering information about enemy supply routes and weapons smuggling operations, the briefing officer continued. Their capture has compromised ongoing intelligence operations throughout this sector, and their rescue is considered a top priority for national security. As the briefing continued, Jake began to understand why Dr. Chen's unique combination of skills made her essential for this mission. Her medical training would be crucial for treating both his team and potentially seriously injured hostages, while her intelligence background and familiarity with the target facility would be vital for navigation and mission success. That afternoon, Jake met with Dr. Chen to discuss the tactical aspects of the upcoming mission. She was dressed in full combat gear rather than medical utilities, and her equipment loadout reflected her dual role as both medic and intelligence operative. The transformation was remarkable. The diplomatic professional he had known was replaced by someone who looked every inch the special operations veteran she actually was. "Commander, I need to brief you on some specific challenges we're going to face at this facility," Dr. Chen began, spreading out detailed maps and photographs across the planning table. "The compound is more heavily defended than the satellite imagery suggests, and the enemy has been systematically torturing the captured operatives to extract information about ongoing intelligence operations." Jake studied the materials she had provided, noting annotations and tactical assessments that could only have come from extensive first-hand reconnaissance. "How recent is this intelligence?" he asked, recognizing that operational planning depended on current and accurate information. "I was at this facility 6 days ago," Dr. Chen replied matter-of-factly. "I've been conducting ongoing surveillance to monitor the condition of the hostages and track changes in defensive positions and guard rotations." The casual way she mentioned recent reconnaissance at a heavily defended enemy facility reminded Jake that Dr. Chen's intelligence work involved levels of risk and expertise that went far beyond anything he had initially understood. Her ability to penetrate enemy security and gather detailed tactical intelligence while maintaining her medical cover identity spoke to operational skills that were remarkable, even by special operations standards. "What's the current condition of the hostages?" Jake asked, knowing that medical planning would need to account for potential injuries and psychological trauma from extended captivity and interrogation. Dr. Chen's expression grew serious as she consulted notes that appeared to be based on direct observation. 2 of the 3 operatives have sustained significant injuries from interrogation techniques designed to extract information quickly. One has a compound fracture of the left arm that's become infected, and another shows signs of severe dehydration and possible internal injuries from beatings. Jake realized that the medical aspect of the mission would be as challenging as the tactical elements, requiring someone with both advanced trauma treatment capabilities and the combat skills necessary to function effectively during a hostile rescue operation. The 3rd operative appears to be in better physical condition, but intelligence suggests that he's been providing information to his captors under duress. Dr. Chen continued, "We'll need to assume that enemy forces have detailed knowledge of our intelligence operations and may be prepared for a rescue attempt. The complexity of the mission was becoming clearer. They would be conducting a combat rescue operation against an enemy that potentially had advanced knowledge of their capabilities and tactics, while simultaneously trying to extract compromised intelligence and provide life-saving medical treatment to seriously injured hostages. Dr. Chen, what's your assessment of our chances for mission success? Jake asked, recognizing that her unique perspective would be valuable for understanding both the tactical and intelligence challenges they would face. She was quiet for a moment, studying the facility layouts and considering factors that only someone with her combination of medical and special operations experience could fully appreciate. The tactical elements are manageable if we can achieve surprise and maintain momentum through the compound, she said finally. The medical challenges will depend on how quickly we can reach the hostages and how much additional trauma they've sustained since my last observation. Jake found himself impressed once again by Dr. Chen's ability to analyze complex operational factors from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Her assessment suggested that while the mission would be extremely challenging, it was feasible if executed with the precision and coordination that both Navy SEALs and Delta Force operatives were trained to achieve. As they concluded their planning session, Jake realized that this mission would require his team to trust Dr. Chen's intelligence and tactical judgment to a degree that went far beyond normal operational relationships. Her knowledge of the target facility and the condition of the hostages would be crucial for mission success, but it also meant that his team's survival would depend on the accuracy of intelligence gathered by someone whose background they were only beginning to understand. The mission launched at 0200 hours under a moonless sky that provided perfect cover for their approach to the target compound. Jake's team moved through the mountain terrain with practiced silence, following routes that Dr. Chen had mapped during her reconnaissance missions. Her knowledge of enemy patrol patterns and defensive positions proved invaluable as they navigated through multiple security perimeters without detection. Overwatch is in position, Sergeant Williams reported through their encrypted communication system. His sniper position on the eastern ridge provided clear fields of fire into the compound, while remaining concealed from enemy observation posts. I count 12 hostiles in external positions, rotating guards every 30 minutes as predicted. Dr. Chen moved alongside Jake's team with the fluid precision of someone returning to familiar territory. Her equipment included both advanced medical supplies and specialized intelligence-gathering tools, reflecting her dual mission objectives. Jake noticed how naturally she adapted her movement techniques to match their tactical approach, never compromising their stealth while maintaining readiness to fulfill her medical responsibilities. Breach point Alpha is clear, Jake whispered as they reached the compound's outer wall exactly where Dr. Chen had indicated. The carefully planned entry point was precisely as she had described, a section of deteriorated masonry that could be quietly removed without alerting nearby guards. Her reconnaissance had been thorough enough to identify structural weaknesses that made their infiltration possible. As they moved through the compound's interior, Dr. Chen provided real-time navigation guidance based on her intimate knowledge of the facility's layout. Her directions were precise and confident, leading them through corridors and past guard positions that she had obviously studied extensively during her surveillance operations. Hostage location is 30 meters ahead. Down the corridor to the left, Dr. Chen whispered, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had walked these same hallways multiple times before. 2 guards posted outside the detention area, rotating every 15 minutes. Next rotation change is in 8 minutes. Jake signaled his team to prepare for the final approach, knowing that timing would be critical for maintaining the element of surprise. Dr. Chen's intelligence had been accurate throughout their infiltration, and he found himself trusting her tactical assessments completely, despite the relatively short time they had worked together. The assault on the guard positions was executed with surgical precision, Jake's team neutralizing the sentries silently before they could raise an alarm. Dr. Chen immediately moved to the detention area door, producing specialized tools that allowed her to bypass the electronic locking system with the skill of someone trained in covert entry techniques. Inside the detention facility, the scene was worse than Dr. Chen's briefings had prepared them for. The 3 captured operatives were in various states of physical and psychological trauma, with injuries that would require immediate medical intervention if they were to survive the extraction process. Dr. Chen immediately began triaging the hostages while Jake's team established defensive positions around the facility. This one needs immediate surgical attention, Dr. Chen announced, examining the operative with the infected compound fracture. The infection has spread beyond what field antibiotics can control. He'll need evacuation to a fully equipped surgical facility within 4 hours or he won't make it. Jake watched as Dr. Chen worked with remarkable efficiency, simultaneously treating life-threatening injuries while gathering intelligence materials that the operatives had managed to conceal from their captors. Her ability to function as both a trauma surgeon and an intelligence analyst under combat conditions was unlike anything Jake had observed in his extensive special operations career. "Commander, we've got movement in the main compound," Williams reported from his overwatch position. "Looks like someone discovered the neutralized guards. We're about to have company." The mission shifted from covert extraction to combat evacuation as enemy forces began converging on their position. Dr. Chen continued treating the most seriously injured hostage while Jake's team prepared defensive positions to hold off the approaching enemy fighters. Her calm focus under fire reminded Jake of their first encounter, when she had treated Rodriguez while coordinating tactical operations. "I need 3 more minutes to stabilize this patient for movement," Dr. Chen called out as automatic weapons fire began echoing through the compound corridors. "He won't survive transport without emergency intervention now," Jake coordinated his team's defensive efforts while watching Dr. Chen perform what amounted to battlefield surgery under combat conditions. Her movements were precise and economical, applying advanced trauma techniques while explosive charges and gunfire erupted around them. The skill level required to maintain surgical precision under such circumstances was extraordinary, even by special operations medical standards. "Extraction helicopter is inbound." "ETA 4 minutes," came the radio call from their aviation support. "Be advised, enemy forces are mobilizing throughout the area. This is going to be a hot extraction." Dr. Chen completed her emergency treatment and began preparing the hostages for transport, coordinating with Jake's team to ensure the most seriously injured operative could be safely moved. Her medical expertise had literally saved the man's life, but Jake realized that her intelligence background was equally important for securing the classified materials they had recovered. These documents contain information about enemy supply networks that goes beyond what we expected to find, Dr. Chen reported while organizing the intelligence materials she had collected. "There's evidence here of weapons trafficking operations that involve multiple countries and organized crime networks." As they fought their way to the extraction point, Jake found himself marveling at Dr. Chen's ability to function effectively in her dual role throughout the mission. She had provided tactical intelligence that made their infiltration possible, performed life-saving medical procedures under combat conditions, and secured intelligence materials that would have significant value for ongoing operations. The helicopter extraction was conducted under heavy enemy fire, with Dr. Chen continuing to monitor the injured hostages while coordinating with the air crew to ensure proper medical support during transport. Her seamless transition between medical and tactical responsibilities had been crucial for mission success. But Jake realized there were still aspects of her background and capabilities that remained mysterious. As they flew toward the forward operating base, Jake watched Dr. Chen complete detailed medical documentation while simultaneously organizing the intelligence materials they had recovered. Her ability to maintain such precise attention to both medical and intelligence requirements suggested a level of training and experience that went beyond anything he had initially understood about her background. The successful completion of the mission had demonstrated Dr. Chen's remarkable capabilities, but it had also raised new questions about the extent of her intelligence operations and the nature of her ongoing assignments. Jake realized that while he now understood more about her background, there were clearly additional layers to her story that remained hidden beneath her carefully maintained professional exterior. 6 months after the hostage rescue mission, Jake found himself in a secure briefing room at the Pentagon, receiving a commendation for his team's exceptional performance during what had officially become known as Operation Silent Recovery. The rescued intelligence operatives had provided information that led to the disruption of major weapons trafficking networks across 3 countries. and the medical treatment they received had saved 2 lives that would otherwise have been lost. What made the ceremony particularly significant was the presence of Dr. Sarah Chen, who was being recognized not just for her medical contributions, but for her intelligence work that had made the entire operation possible. She stood at attention in dress uniform that displayed decorations Jake had never seen before, awards that spoke to years of classified operations and achievements that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. Dr. Chen's unique combination of medical expertise and intelligence capabilities represents the future of special operations. Support, the presenting general, announced to the assembled audience of senior military and intelligence officials. Her ability to function effectively in multiple roles while maintaining operational security has set new standards for multidisciplinary mission execution. After the ceremony, Jake finally had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Chen about her background without the operational security restrictions that had limited their previous conversations. They walked through the Pentagon corridors toward the Officers Club, where other personnel from their mission were gathering for an informal celebration. So now that the mission is declassified, can you tell me how someone goes from Delta Force to medical school to intelligence work? Jake asked, genuinely curious about the career path that had led to such diverse expertise. Dr. Chen smiled, seeming more relaxed than Jake had ever seen her. It wasn't exactly a linear progression, she admitted. After 7 years with Delta, I was injured during a mission in Syria. Took shrapnel that damaged my spine and ended my operational career. During my recovery, I decided to pursue medical training, partly because I wanted to help other injured soldiers and partly because I needed something challenging to focus on during rehabilitation. Jake listened with growing respect as Dr. Chen explained how her medical training had led to opportunities in military medicine, which eventually attracted the attention of intelligence agencies looking for personnel who could operate in hostile environments while maintaining legitimate medical cover. The intelligence community realized that someone with my background could access areas and gather information that traditional operatives couldn't reach, Dr. Chen continued. Medical personnel can go places and ask questions that would immediately arouse suspicion if attempted by obvious intelligence operatives. They entered the Officers Club, where Jake's team members were already celebrating with other personnel who had been involved in various aspects of Operation Silent Recovery. Rodriguez, fully recovered from his shoulder injury, raised his glass in salute when he saw Dr. Chen approaching. To the doc who saved my life and probably all of ours, Rodriguez announced to the group, I still can't believe we worked with someone who had that kind of background and never knew it. Dr. Chen accepted the recognition graciously, but Jake could see that she remained somewhat uncomfortable with attention that focused on her classified work. Her preference for operating in the shadows was clearly deeply ingrained from years of intelligence operations, where success depended on maintaining cover identities. The most impressive thing wasn't just your medical skills or your tactical knowledge, Sergeant Williams observed, joining their conversation. It was the way you could switch between roles without missing a beat. 1 minute you're performing surgery under fire. The next minute you're coordinating helicopter gunships like you'd been doing it your whole career. Dr. Chen's response revealed more about her philosophy than Jake had expected. In special operations and intelligence work, you learn that rigid role definitions can get people killed, she explained. The mission comes first and you do whatever is necessary to accomplish it successfully. Sometimes that means being a medic, sometimes it means being a tactical coordinator, and sometimes it means being an intelligence analyst. As the evening progressed, Jake learned more about Dr. Chen's background and the nature of her current assignments. Her work involved supporting special operations units throughout multiple theaters while gathering intelligence on enemy capabilities and tactics. Her medical credentials provided legitimate cover for accessing areas where traditional intelligence operatives couldn't function effectively. Are you continuing with intelligence work or returning to full-time medical practice? Jake asked during a quiet moment in their conversation. Dr. Chen considered the question carefully before responding. The military has invested significantly in my training and capabilities, she said. There are ongoing operations where my particular combination of skills is considered valuable. As long as I can contribute to mission success and help save lives, I'll continue doing this work. Jake realized that Dr. Chen's story represented something larger than individual career choices. It reflected the evolving nature of modern military operations where traditional boundaries between specialties were becoming increasingly fluid. Her ability to function effectively as both a medical professional and an intelligence operative suggested new approaches to personnel development and mission execution. Later that evening, as the celebration began to wind down, Jake found himself reflecting on how much his understanding of military operations had evolved through working with Dr. Chen. Her example had demonstrated that the most effective military professionals were those who could adapt their skills to meet mission requirements rather than limiting themselves to narrow specialty definitions. Commander Morrison, Dr. Chen approached Jake as he prepared to leave. I wanted to thank you and your team for the professional way you handled learning about my background. Not everyone adapts as well to working with personnel who operate under multiple identities. Jake shook her hand, recognizing that their professional relationship had evolved into genuine mutual respect based on shared commitment to mission success and the welfare of military personnel. Dr. Chen, anytime you need a SEAL team for future operations, my unit would be honored to work with you again. As Jake watched Dr. Chen leave the officers' club, he realized that their brief professional association had fundamentally changed his understanding of what modern military service could involve. Her story demonstrated that the most valuable military professionals were those who refused to be limited by conventional role definitions and instead developed capabilities that could adapt to whatever challenges their missions might require. The wounded SEAL who had been treated by a mysterious medic had become part of a much larger story about the evolution of military operations and the remarkable individuals who served in ways that couldn't always be publicly acknowledged. Dr. Sarah Chen's silent service represented the dedication of countless military professionals who operated in the shadows, protecting others while their own stories remained largely untold.